So welcome to Dale Carnegie's Leadership Legacy, Creating the Team of the Future. So my name is Ryan Akins, and I am the Regional President for Dale Carnegie North Texas. And so I oversee our team of trainers and consultants that provide training services for organizations around North Texas. So typically how we work with clients is we'll meet with clients that want to develop their leaders and develop a bench strength of leaders, and we help them put together plans in order to do that over time. And this is a really exciting topic for us, leadership legacy, because so many of our clients ask us to help with this very issue. And we're going to talk about succession planning, but we're also going to talk about some factors that help us build that bench strength in addition to succession planning. So what we'll do here is for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to introduce some concepts that we're seeing work for a lot of our most successful clients. And then after that, we're going to actually bring a client on who I'll introduce at that time, who's actually putting a lot of these things into practice, because you can hear from Dale Carnegie and we can tell you about what all these great companies are doing, but we think it's a lot more powerful if you hear directly from the leaders of those organizations. So we're really excited to bring on this client, and he's the president or CEO and founder of this organization. And then finally, in the last 15 minutes, we're going to do Q&A. So anytime during this first 15 minutes, actually during the first 30 minutes, if you have a question that you want to ask either me or our guest, just click that Q&A button down at the bottom of your window and type in your question there, as opposed to clicking the chat and putting it in the chat. So the chat function in this webinar is mainly for interaction throughout, and the Q&A is what we'll go to at the very end of the 30 minutes to actually answer your questions. So just so we understand how to use the tools here, in case some of you haven't used Zoom webinar or haven't been on a Zoom webinar before, you'll notice if you click the chat button at the bottom of your screen, a chat window comes up. Now, you'll notice at the bottom of that chat window, there's a little blue bubble that says all panelists. You want to click, and there's an arrow. You want to click that arrow, and a pull-down menu comes. Choose all panelists and attendees. That way, when we ask you questions and you're actually going to be putting in answers, everyone can see your answers. So just as a test that it's working for everyone, please do that. Go ahead and click on two panelists and attendees on the bottom right and type in the chat what the biggest challenge is that you see in creating a succession plan for your organization. So please type your answer, just 3 or 4 words or a short sentence. What are the biggest challenges you see in creating a succession plan for your organization? So we're doing 2 things. We're getting the discussion started, and we're also testing and making sure everyone has that setting, all panelists and attendees, right. So go ahead and fill that out for us, please. I'll prime the pump here. Thanks, Caitlin. I posted something. Please, everyone on here, please post something. I want to make sure that the chat function is working. Thank you. All right. Good. Thanks, Andrew. Perfect. Thanks, Bob. The right person, trust. Yeah, it's true. Making sure that we have that person on our bench, right? Lack of mentorship. We're going to talk about that as well. And just too busy. Same people needed for the different roles, staying focused on our objective. Yes. Yep. These are all right. They're all real challenges that we all face, including us at Dale Carnegie. So we're not immune to these challenges of succession planning. Okay, great. So yeah, lack of membership. So let's do a quick poll. I want to find out kind of where we are as a group here, and we're going to talk about bench strength here. So please answer these questions. So the first question is, do you feel like your senior leadership team has people that can take over each of their own roles immediately in an emergency? So as an example, I'm the regional president for Dale Carnegie. Do I feel like someone could step into my role if I had an emergency? Let's say, God forbid, I got in an accident and I was out for 3 months. Could someone do my job? And then the second question is, has your organization developed a succession plan that has been communicated clearly to team members? And this is anonymous, so you don't have to worry about anyone seeing your answer. We really want to, I think it's helpful for us all to know kind of where we're starting from. So we'll give this another 15 seconds, let people have a chance to answer. See, a couple people haven't chosen an answer yet, so go ahead and choose your answer on this. Give it another 10 seconds. Okay, let's see what the results are. So here we have it. So it's about half and half. So it sounds like half the people on the call, a little more than half, feel like someone could take over that senior leadership role in an emergency, which is really strong. And then the other half is no, which is obviously super scary. And when we're talking about that, we really have to distinguish. There's two things we're talking about here that are very different: succession planning and replacement planning. Replacement planning is what happens in an emergency, right? Succession planning is taking over and taking the organization forward. So this first question is all about replacement planning, which is very critical. I mean, it's the first step. We gotta cover our bases in case something happens. The second question here is more about succession planning. As we can see, most of us have not developed a succession plan that has been communicated clearly to team members. So it's good to know. So that being said, let's talk about some of the different challenges we have. I mean, some of us talked about time being a challenge, and in our leadership training for results program that we offer publicly to more senior level leaders, we talk about time management and how we choose to spend our time, and we talk about what's called the tyranny of the urgent. So I'm going to show you a graphic that we use just to illustrate that. This was originally developed by Dwight Eisenhower, former president of the United States, and then it was popularized by a guy named Charles Hummel, who wrote a little booklet called Tyranny of the Urgent. But it basically puts all of our activities into 4 quadrants, and the first one being things that are urgent and important, which, well, we got to put out fires, right? It's an urgent thing that we got to do. If you look at number 3, those are things that are, that's where the word tyranny comes in. Those are things that are not important. And I think of this as emails. Most emails are urgent but not important, meaning urgent because people are expecting a response, not important because they're not the best use of our time. I've heard one of our trainers describe quadrant 3 are when other people are asking us to do their jobs for them. So that can be something that's urgent to them, but not to us. Quadrant 4 is, distractions, which we want to, solitaire or whatever the latest games are, Candy Crush, things that are distracting and really are time sucks that we want to stay away from. Number 2 is this. Number 2 is succession planning. It's all kinds of planning. It's training, it's development, it's looking into the future and coming up with a plan and an action plan around it. And the challenge is most of our time is usually taken in quadrant 1 and 3, and not enough time is allocated to quadrant 2. So it's really a time management plan, and that's why a lot of us don't have that succession plan, and it's not being communicated to our team properly, is because we're stuck in quadrant 3. I mean, a lot of the time. Right? So what are some of the keys to succession planning and developing this? So let's see here. Before I do that, I just want to what percentage of your time do you think you spend in quadrant 3? So things that are urgent but not important. You had to guess percentage of your week that you spend in quadrant 3. What would you guess that would be? And I'm gonna type in. I'm gonna get vulnerable here and type in what I think. Yeah, I probably spend 40% of my time. Yeah, thanks for your candor. It's one of those things that we beat ourselves up over. And yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, too much, right? We all agree too much in quadrant 3. We don't know the exact number, but definitely too much, right? Okay, so let's look at, let's go back to our slides here. So we need to learn how to stay away from quadrant 3. And again, that's just a training thing, right? I mean, in time management, and we cover that in our leadership training for results program. Here are our challenges with building a bench. Okay. So one of them was mentioned earlier. It's knowledge transfer. We've heard a lot from our clients in oil and gas, in construction, that one of the challenges is their plate is so full that, and there's a generational gap, right? I mean, we have one huge group of the population as baby boomers, and then we have the Xers, the Generation X, which is in between. So baby boomers are people in their 50s, 60s. Xers are people in their 40s, which is really actually like late 30s and 40s, really small generation. That's my generation. We're a tiny sliver of the percentage of baby boomers. And then we have the biggest generation in the workforce right now, which is millennials, people in their 20s and 30s. And then Generation Z are people that are just entering the workforce now. Gigantic. So we have the baby boomers trying to do the jobs of leadership and taking the organization forward. And then we have these millennials that are like, well, show me how to do it. And what do the baby boomers say, especially if they're in individual contributor roles? I don't have time. I'm trying to get my job done, so I don't have time. And so there's a mentorship gap. And part of it is, and I don't think most of the time it's because of indifference or apathy. It's really a time thing. And to be fair to them, they're not getting paid to mentor a lot of the time. We're expecting them to as leaders, but not getting paid for that. And sometimes it's unfair to expect that people to do things that they're not getting compensated for. Retention is another big challenge. Obviously, that we're all facing retention issues. North Texas, I think our unemployment last time I checked is down near 3%, which is really zero unemployment. So anyone that's good that has a job has one. And if you have good people on your team, they are being recruited constantly by your competitors, right? It's just the reality. And there are a lot of great offers on the table for everyone at all times right now. So retention's an issue because when we lose someone, it's not only the loss of knowledge and skill that we have, but then just hiring someone new, the cost. It's, we have recruiting costs, we have decrease in productivity, onboarding, all these things cost money. They hit the bottom line. And so retention can be really challenging for us in building strength. Management buy-in is an interesting one because it has to do with paranoia. All right. So if we are creating a succession plan for our senior leadership team, if we don't get their buy-in, if we don't really communicate it in a way that makes them part of the plan, they may be in fear of getting replaced by someone younger. And so if they're in fear of getting replaced, they're not going to have the buy-in. They're not going to support the program, whatever we design, and they may work against it. And so it's really important when we're thinking. It's really easy to ignore that because we assume our leadership team, our senior leadership team, they are our right hands. We depend on them so much, and they've worked so hard with us towards organizational goals. We have to be really sensitive to the fact that there may be fear also as they're getting older or they're getting closer to retirement. These young, hard-charging people coming up in the organization, they may see them as a threat, and so we have to get management buy-in as well, and that can be challenging. And then ongoing evaluation, it becomes for some companies they have entire HR departments that handle this. For other companies, a lot of it, we have a couple of clients that are pretty sizable clients, over 200 employees, where their CEO is the one doing all the HR work, right? And that's a delegation issue, really. But it's also maybe just that they haven't found that right person to handle all that. But ongoing evaluation is critical because if we hire someone expecting them to fill certain roles, we have to have just points along the way where we're evaluating them. So let's look at just some basic ways that we can overcome some of these challenges. Focus on culture first. When we're talking about retention, we have to focus on our culture. We have to stop the bleeding. If we, like, no succession planning is going to work if we have a revolving door at our organizations. And what we've seen is that revolving door comes down to culture. And, culture has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with core values. It has to do with mission. It also has to do with having processes in place that don't waste time, because there's nothing more frustrating for employees when they feel like they're doing work that is a waste of time. And we've all experienced it in our careers. And if we're really honest, we admit there's a lot of that stuff going on in our own organizations. We have to create and document processes. But that social intelligence component is just as critical. Have we created a culture of cooperation? Have we created a culture of mentorship? Have we trained people and given them the tools that they need to reinforce that culture? Are we staying true to our core values? Are we holding ourselves accountable and everyone else accountable? Are we rewarding and are we hiring, rewarding, and promoting based on demonstration of core values? All that stuff is culture. And then recruiting strategically. I mean, if we're thinking about roles that we have to fill 5 years from now, which I know a lot of us are, like we said, we're in quadrant 1, we're putting out fires. But if we take the time to think about what our organization is going to look like 5 years from now, we need to be recruiting accordingly. And it may be confusing to a lot of people why we hire certain people. A lot of our individual contributors might be scratching their head thinking, why is that person being hired? But we need to know that we're hiring people that are going to fill certain roles in the future. And, if they're scratching their heads, that means we're not communicating properly, right? It goes back to, are we communicating our succession plan? It shouldn't be confusing to anyone, which goes to the next thing, is communicating the plan. Making sure that we have really clear communication of what the plan is and why, because it just makes people feel comfortable. And then finally, evaluating and reevaluating, but not too often. So, we can change our mind very easily based on daily interactions with employees. And we could say, okay, well, this week, this person, I could definitely see them in a leadership role. And then something happens the following week. And that week we're like, I don't think they're a good leader anymore. So not being impulsive with our opinions about that, and keeping our reevaluations to maybe every quarter or every 6 months is probably a more reasonable time for us to look at the big picture. And as opposed to look for individual incidents or situations, looking at the big picture, does this person have the qualities that we need for those leadership roles? So those are the steps. I mean, they're pretty simple. Obviously, the challenge is actually putting them into practice. But right now, like I said, it's more interesting to hear from someone in the trenches doing this with their own organization than hearing from me. So I'd like to now introduce a client of ours. And he's the CEO and founder of Peloton Land Solutions. So they're a civil engineering company, and they were founded in 2010. 3 partners, and their first year they were 10 to 20 employees. Now they have 120 employees, and so we're talking about rapid growth. And this gentleman is just someone that I have so much respect for, because he's made culture such an important part of his organization, and he's actually given his people the tools to succeed. And so wanted to have a conversation with him about how he's planning for the future, how he's building his bench strength. So everyone, I'd like us all to welcome Mr. Aric Head, the CEO and co-founder of Peloton Land Solutions. Hey, Aric, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Aric, just so people, in case people aren't familiar with Peloton Land Solutions or Peloton Land Services, what are a couple of projects you're working on right now that you're super excited about?
Yeah, so we basically provide civil engineering, survey, planning, environmental services to primarily private sector clients. We have some municipal clients, but most of our work is on the private sector side. Some of you may be familiar with the Clear Fork project.
Sure.
Close to downtown Fort Worth.
Yeah.
You have it's kind of a higher end commercial retail project. One of our signature, we're the engineer of record on that project.
Cool.
We do a lot of work at Alliance, Texas, and around Alliance Airport for their industrial and
Exciting.
retail commercial office program. So those may be a couple of projects that people.
Oh, sure. Yeah, those are pretty high profile. So we appreciate you being on. And the first question I wanted to ask you is, I know you have core values, and a lot of companies do. When we're talking about, like, we're really talking about retention and creating a culture where people want to stay. First question I want to ask you is, how do you reinforce core values in your organization?
Yeah, well, we try to do it in several ways. Probably one of the best ways to reinforce values is just in the moment. If we're familiar with our values, we know those values in the moment, a teaching moment. It's probably one of the best ways. One of our core values is we are about relationships. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if you have a problem on a project and you're in a client meeting, and you're working through that issue. And you get through that issue and you kind of collaboratively solve the issue with the client. That client leaves the conference room. You could kind of then say, to your junior employee or the junior project manager, hey, just so you know, that relationship that we have with Joe just carried us through that issue. So that's one of the ways, just Sure. in the moment. We have other ways we communicate our values, obviously through print, social media. One of my favorite ways we do it is through our employee reviews.
Okay.
On the first page of our employee review document, employees review themselves and the managers review those employees. We have our values and we have a description of what those values are. And a lot of the evaluations, questions in the evaluation form are written with the backdrop of our values.
Okay. How often do you all do those reviews?
Twice a year.
Okay. Yeah. Every 6 months. Good.
Yeah. But we also, another way we communicate our values. We have young professionals meetings once a month, and we may take a couple of months to talk about, our values again, just to reiterate those values.
Okay.
We're working on building a platform right now for project management training, and I expect, our values to be in like a module in that platform.
That's
so company newsletters and just, talking day to day about our values with our employees and, pointing those things out in the moment.
Okay, cool.
The ways we try to
no, that's great. Those are you seem to reinforce them from a lot of different angles there. That's really exciting. How do you create a culture where people want to stay? And we talked about, focus on culture first if we want to build a bench. How do you get people to want to stay at Peloton? I mean, obviously engineering is hot right now, and there's a lot of companies out there, and I'm sure they're trying to snatch your good people away. How do you get people to want to stay at Peloton?
That's a great question. You mentioned that a while ago, but it's challenging. It's challenging, I think, for every industry right now, and we're challenged by it. It's kind of you look at the people that we've lost over the last few years. A lot of the folks that have left didn't necessarily leave to our competition, which is good. They leave for other things.
Sure.
But on the front lines, you've got to start at the recruiting stage and being better recruiters. So we worked on that the last couple of years, and I think we've become better recruiters, knowing who we want to engage, bring in for an interview, and ultimately hire. We use actually a sort of an assessment, a tool to help us ask better questions of potential employees.
Okay.
So just hiring the right people for your company is really the first step to take. Other than that, you want your managers really engaging with their younger staff. Your key leaders need to engage with your employees. That is the number one reason people stay or leave is their manager. Yeah. So we want our managers to be involved in their projects and with our people constantly. And you need to make it, the environment, you need to make it a fun environment, but a teaching environment. When I got out of school, Ryan, back in 1995, I just wanted a job. I was just happy to show up at work, right? I didn't really need anything else. Just show me what to do, and I want to earn it. Some of the millennials nowadays, they want more. They want to see what the meaning is through their work. What kind of impact am I making on my city, my community, and society? So you've got to champion those wins and those things that we're doing to make the world a better place. And that's a good message that people want to hear. And so we try to communicate that through our company newsletters and talking about it and those sorts of things.
That's cool. So you mentioned creating a teaching environment. how do you get the more experienced employees to teach the newer employees? I mean, obviously those experienced employees they're busy with their own projects, right? So how do you get them to stop and take the time to coach the younger employees?
You just have to remind. Most of our managers or junior or senior leaders, they're in projects. So we run a better ship when we're in projects, and so our managers can't just give younger staff a task and walk away for a week. They've got to be with them, several times a day, answering questions, directing, leading them to, if it's a design solution or whatever.
Sure.
They've got to be present constantly.
Have you ever been in a situation, or have you ever seen a situation at any point over the last 10 years where someone's managing a project and they're managing younger employees, and instead of delegating to them, they're just doing all the work themselves because they don't want to take the time to train the other person? Does that happen sometimes?
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. And is there a way that how does the mentor enjoy or get, I guess more directly, how do they get compensated for the success of younger employees? I mean, what's in it for them, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so maybe you're getting at how do you advance leadership, or how do you advance folks within an organization?
Yeah.
To elevate them in their career and their career path with Peloton. We've established a pretty defined associate principal program within our company, and you were talking about succession planning a minute ago. I just turned 50 a couple weeks ago, Ryan, so I'm feeling it, but I'm not going to work forever, and our senior leaders aren't going to work forever. So you got to be thinking about the next generation. And we try to do that through not just succession plus transition of ownership of the company. We're a C Corp, so we have stock in the company, and myself and my two original founding partners are transitioning shares of the company to those associate principals and principals in our company.
Okay.
If you wait too long in our business, if you wait too long, the employees of the company can't afford to get you out of the company. So you have to start early, and you have to give up some ownership over time, and that helps with retention too with our leaders. But we've identified for our associates, basically, we say that our associates are those who have demonstrated leadership, have demonstrated they have the potential to demonstrate more leadership, and they have the potential to be a shareholder one day. So we start talking about our associates. We have nominations and elections every year. We start talking about who might be a potential associate as early as May or June. Okay. So we have conversations at least once a month leading up to the end of the year. Then we'll have a nomination and then a vote amongst our shareholders to promote that individual to an associate, to be an associate. And as they continue in their career at Peloton, they have the ability, if they continue to demonstrate and they grow and they gain experience, hopefully that individual is nominated and elected to be an associate principal, which would be a shareholder in our company. So
got it.
We have criteria that we've defined. It's all the things you might imagine, financial responsibility, working with our values in mind, being aligned with company leadership and those types of things. It's not a scorecard or anything like that, but we have defined topics to discuss amongst the leadership. How's that individual doing against the backdrop of these criteria? It's not a scorecard, it's just a discussion. It's a framework that we can discuss how we grow and promote our people within. Okay.
I mean, I think that really clearly answers the question. It's what's in it for them coaching someone else. I mean, you've created a path to ownership. I mean, that's really exciting. So.
Yeah, and you have to. I had a competitor, a friend of mine, years ago. Their company was, you talk about developing leadership in your company to be an owner one day. Their firm was probably 150 people at one time, and they were asking how things were going. Well, they probably had he told me 30 or 40 people. And I'm like, wow, what happened? And it was kind of during the Great Recession too. So part of that was just that. But you said, we're the size that we are because we couldn't retain and develop the leadership we needed to sustain growth in our company. So that stuck with me. And you got to hammer home through all your senior leadership. You've got to be advancing others' leadership potential all the time, or you'll be stuck. Where
really
you are in terms of numbers and value company.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your candid answers. You really gave us kind of an inside view of an organization that's obviously difficult code on creating a succession plan. I mean, it really takes. Do you have someone specific that is like charged with, I mean, kind of the nuts and bolts of executing on this plan, or is it you and your two partners, or is there a bigger leadership team that does this all together? Who does the work? I mean, that's always the question. It's like we get a lot of times in businesses, we get these great ideas from our employees. We're like, well, it's a great idea, but we have a capacity problem. Who's going to actually do it? Who's going to organize it, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it comes down to actually who's going to write it or do it, right? But we tend to approach everything in a team fashion. We have a board of directors that work with very closely, and there are other principals or associate principals that enjoy doing some more of the leadership development more than others. So we kind of focus on what we like doing, and allocate or just who's going to take on this responsibility. You assign responsibility if necessary, but we tend to work on the ideas and the concepts as a group.
That's great. Very cool. Well, let's take some Q&A from the audience here. It looks like we have 3 questions here, or 2 questions here. So regarding strategic recruiting, do you have any ideas for this? Any specific tests, hiring tactics, or interview questions that either of you have found extremely useful? Aric, I want to let you because you mentioned and you use an assessment. What assessment do you use when you're hiring or promoting?
Yeah, so we've started using the zero risk assessment tool.
Okay.
And it's an interesting tool. I've taken the assessment. It's basically some of the questions, you get like maybe 20 statements, and you get to assign them like 1 through 20. Like which statement is the best statement? Okay. Moms and babies is above nuclear war. So you put that one on top, right? So it's an interesting assessment, but what it gives us is insight into that candidate, and it does generate interview questions that are specific to maybe the personality type of that individual.
Okay.
So it just helps our managers interview better and probe deeper than you might otherwise.
Have you benchmarked based on the high performers in those roles?
Well, we did. We benchmarked everyone in our company. So we kind of group people based on what they do, within the company. So we do have benchmarks, and we're learning. We've only been doing this for just a little bit less than a year. So it's something I hope we get better at, but it's so key to retention. You got to do the work up front and not just, gamble that somebody's going to work out. You want to know that somebody's going to work out if you're going to make that investment in them, hiring, teaching, training. But yeah, so that's a tool that we use. We recruit kind of multi-tier. We hit a lot of universities, civil engineers or landscape architects that are environmental scientists that are coming out of school. We go to all the job fairs and stay in front of that. We have a pretty robust college recruiting program. It is, again, it's hard to find qualified, great people out there because they already have jobs, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of pull them out of an organization that they may be comfortable in. So we do try to recruit out of universities, but we also have to, hire for experience too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges that we've had in the past is, we have I think a 7-step interviewing process. And once we get someone to step 4, they've already got job offers for other places. So they leave, so but it's the balance. It's like, if we don't go through those processes, we might really regret it later by hiring the wrong person, which hiring the wrong person is way more expensive than not hiring someone.
Sure.
And for us, I mean, one of the things I can tell you we haven't figured out from an assessment tool standpoint is the right assessment for hiring salespeople, because we found that so many different types of personalities can be good at sales. And then there are people that, these sales assessments say, oh, they're a natural salesperson, but if they don't want to be in sales, they're not going to be good at it either.
Right.
But I think a lot of these assessments, like we've used Culture Index, we've used different forms of the DISC assessment. I think they're really useful when it comes to other functional areas. But in our experience, it's one. This is, like I said, we have a 7-step process. The assessment tool is one of those 7 steps. So it's not the deciding factor, but it's an indicator.
All right.
And from an interview question standpoint, I like scenarios, giving people scenarios. Here's a scenario. What would you do, or what would you say? Also, if it's the type of role where we're going to ask someone to take a lot of risk, we should push their comfort zone in the interview and see how they do. We had one interview where I remember it was our top consultant interviewed someone that was interested in becoming a Dale Carnegie consultant, and he purposely challenged that candidate. And that candidate, their response was really shutting down and saying, well, this is not what I'd expect from a Dale Carnegie culture. And what we were really doing is trying to find out, okay, how does this person deal with difficult people, which we have to deal with all the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's definitely an art, not a science. And the important thing is, I think you mentioned, is that we have a process in place that we use, right? Just so there's some consistency.
Absolutely, we do. And a candidate might be interviewed, usually will be interviewed by multiple people. The first interview might be with our operations manager in any one office. Second interview might be with our younger staff to see what they, because everyone's going to ask different questions and have a different opinion. So you're trying to get a pretty well-rounded, bead on that candidate to make sure you're hiring the right person. So it's, again, interviewing is a collaborative type process at our company.
Yep. Cool. Another question I have from Narissa in the chat was, what type of activities do you do to improve culture or retain a culture of employees so they would want to stay? I'll start with this one. One of the things that we realized that people want was more social interaction. And so we started doing family grub night once a month at a client, one of our Dale Carnegie graduates, at his restaurant once a month. And we made sure that everyone was able to invite their families, which isn't that expensive. But it gave everyone a chance to get together in a non-work setting, especially because our company, like a lot of companies now, have a lot of remote workers. We have people that work from home. We have people that work from different offices, and some people don't see each other very often. And so we're like, how do we get people together in a fun environment, but also engage their families? And so we've gotten great response, and like people show up and they have fun. And that's one of the things that we've done to create a culture where people would want to stay. What about you, Aric?
Yeah, similar activities. We'll have quarterly or at least 3 large events for, each office is a little different, but we encourage each of our offices to do things outside of the office. Do something fun, invite families a couple times. We'll have our offices will have a summer picnic, so that's always fun. But do things like that. One of the things that we do too, other than kind of the fun stuff, and we try to encourage our employees to get involved in community, get involved in things, right? Nonprofit activities, not just, they're involved in professional organizations, obviously. Sure. But we like to encourage folks to give back to the community that gives to us. So we'll do teamwork type things with one of the organizations we're a part of, it's March for Babies. So we have several activities planned for this spring leading up to the March to try to fundraise for that organization. So
that's great.
Those things are fun for employees too, because they want to give back to their community as well. They get the importance of it, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that indicates that organizations where teams volunteer together have a higher level of engagement and therefore a higher level of retention. Yeah. There's one organization that we're members of. It's called CFT for Business. It's Communities Foundation of Texas created it. And if you join, it's really low cost. If you're an organization, here was our problem. We wanted to give back to the community, but it went back to a capacity issue. Who has time to organize things? Who has time to put it all together? And if you join CFT for Business, they organize all the volunteer activities. So all your employees can just get online and they just sign up and they organize the actual events. So we've done the Food Bank of North Texas. We've done a lot of, I forget the name of the organizations, but we put together lunches for kids that don't have meals. So That's a great organization. I think they're all over the Metroplex now too. So that's something that we've done to, I think giving back as a team is super important.
And you've got to, the other sort of other leg of the stool is investing in your employees from a technical standpoint. Our business is fairly technical, so we'll have, brown bag sessions on an issue, whether it may be a change for a zoning process in the city, or something to do with, storm drain design, new manuals that are coming out from a city. We want our employees to learn and grow, just from a technical standpoint too. So I think they appreciate that. I think a lot of employees appreciate sort of being invited to learn more about our business and how we conduct business. They're interested in those things. And so you've got to, have a framework of some sort to let them peek into, a little bit of how we do project management. What are the metrics important to running our business? We got to keep the lights on. There's a lot of things that expenses and revenues and et cetera. You've got to keep at the forefront to keep the lights on. So employees are interested in those types of things too, and letting them see that, I think is good. A lot of organizations don't do that.
Yeah, no, you're right. The last question, and we're almost out of time here, but it says, what if you feel like your core values aren't fully known to your team, or may perhaps no longer be the best fit? Is it unhealthy or healthy to reevaluate your company's values? My answer to this is it's absolutely healthy to reevaluate, and we've actually changed our organizational core values twice in the last 5 years, based not saying that the old values were bad, but in looking forward of what we want to become, like, are these values in practice going to get us there? And so I think it's super healthy. And then creating cascading messages of what the values are to everyone, creating a video explaining them, and then from a reinforcement standpoint, sending emails recognizing people that we see demonstrating those core values. We started doing that. Not only was I directly recognizing people, but employees started recognizing each other by email and CCing everyone. So it became this we got some momentum with these core values. What about you, Aric?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly healthy to reevaluate. We actually just, when we sort of initiated a few years ago, and we were probably in the business 6 or 7 years, and we hadn't documented our values yet. And it was just time. It was time to put it on paper, put a stake in the ground, so people knew your values are there, but you want people to see them.
Yeah.
So we did that. We developed, it was with a larger group, over the course of 9 months, that we came up with our mission, vision, and values. We came up with 6 values that people were comfortable with. And it was basically our associates level folks, and up. And we did a survey with the entire company at one point, but we had 6 values, and we kind of, over time, we worn those a little bit. We kind of drilled down to 3 core values. And you have multiple values, but we've drilled down to core values. We're in the process of sort of rolling those out. The brand strategy and establishing the initial values weren't that long ago, a year or two ago. So we're sort of recasting our core values to everyone just over time. We just completed our business plan, and that was one of the first pages in our business plan, is sort of just stating our core values. Yeah,
that's great. And I really don't think you can over communicate core values. I just think it's the more we talk about it, the more it becomes just ingrained in the culture, right? So I do want to mention, speaking of communicating effectively, we do have an event coming up called How to Give a Killer Presentation. And Madison on my team is about to post the links and details for that. So whether you're in Tyler, Dallas, Fort Worth, or Denton, if you click on there, you'll go to the Eventbrite page, and you'll get in that event. And it's just a 90-minute meal. It's a super high value event. And whether you're a Dale Carnegie graduate, we limit 5 seats per company, because the goal of these is to make sure that we get different people's perspectives. But communicating effectively is one of the things we coach our client organizations on. So we wanted to do this event to demonstrate how it all works. But Aric, I really want to thank you for being a guest on this webcast. Thanks so much for your candor and giving us a real inside view of your company, and not everyone is willing to be as transparent as you have been. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, you're very, very welcome. We'll say to the group, not everything we do is perfect. We make mistakes along the way, but you got to try to communicate values or to develop your leaders. You're going to try things and they may not work out. That's okay. Try something else.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. All right, Aric, have a great day. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your week and weekend.